So hello friends, welcome to the Anatomy Hub. Today we'll study about the cerebrum, the neuroanatomy of the cerebrum. As you know, the cerebrum is home to many smaller structures that regulate numerous core functions in the entirety of the human body. Functions controlled by minor structures of the cerebrum are the interpretation of sensory information, emotions, learning, problem solving, motor control, and much more that we will see. The outer layer of the cerebrum, that is known as the cerebral cortex, that is referred to the hub of thought, and it is integral to cognitive function. Two hemispheres that you will find over here make up the whole the cerebrum, the left and the right hemisphere, and they control the symmetrical divisions of the body opposite to them. The left hemisphere controls the muscles on the right side of the body, and the right hemisphere controls the left muscles. The two regions, they are connected by the bundle of white matter fibers that they are known as the corpus callosum. So this corpus callosum is nothing but the bundle of axons. They are just connecting to both the sides of this cerebral hemisphere, and together compose what is considered to be part of key characteristics setting humans apart from the non-human animals. The left and right hemispheres, although the left and right hemisphere, they don't function independently of one another. There are certain functions for which one hemisphere excels over the other. A brief overview of what hemispheres are currently known as, and they controls that mainly the left hemisphere, it has the analytical skills, problem solving, whereas the right side, it has the creativity nature. Left hemisphere has the logic, whereas right has the imagination. Left has the reasoning, whereas the right has the spatiotemporal awareness, and left has the language, and right has the reflective conscious thought. Left can be done the calculations mathematics, but right side, that is mainly concerned with the music interpretation. And this right side also makes the visual imagery. So muscles of the right side of the body, that is controlled by the left hemisphere, and muscles of the left side of the body is controlled by this right hemisphere. Because of the popular notion of being a left or right brain type of person is not exactly rooted in scientific evidence, the dominance of either hemisphere doesn't make you more creative or give you more of chance to pass a medical subject or a math subject or whatever it is than your classmates. So what it does mean? However, it is that whether you are left or right-handed person is influenced by which hemisphere of your brain is dominant over the other. The process that drive this dominance are unclear, and it's not something that we can be consciously controlled outside of a practice session every now and then writing with the opposite hand. Not only do the hemispheres control the muscles on the opposite side of the body, but the intake and processing of sensory information as well. So here you'll find several lobes, the cerebral lobes. Aside from the left and right hemisphere, the cerebrum can be categorized into four distinct lobes. The frontal lobe that you can see over here, the parietal lobe over here, the temporal lobe that will be just below to this parietal lobe, both the side, and occipital lobe that will find over here. So here we'll see the lateral part or the lateral surface of your cerebrum. where you will find the frontal lobe over here, the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe, and your occipital lobe. So this whole orange colored part is your frontal lobe, this purple one is the parietal lobe, and the blue one is the temporal lobe, and the green one is your occipital lobe. So this frontal lobe, that is where it has the executive functions such as your regulation and expression of emotions, language, reason, problem solving, sexuality, and planning takes place here in the frontal lobe. It is also where the primary motor cortex, the area of the brain that is responsible for controlling the voluntary movement, is located over here, and the Broca's area, one of the two key area in speech, that is located in the frontal lobe as well. The human frontal lobe, it is larger and more developed than any other organism, which is partial explanation of why the rise of the planet of the apes is never going to happen, at least in our lifetime, and sadly why the gorilla at the zoo won't talk back to you. The frontal lobe is the center of higher functions that separate humans from all other species, giving us the ability to communicate and form the rational thoughts in a way that is not yet physiologically possible for other species. Like that, here we'll find the parietal lobe. So this parietal lobe is situated directly behind the frontal lobe and separated by what is called as the central sulcus that we'll find over here. So this portion of the brain is responsible for taking in and interpreting the tactile sensory information, touch, temperature, pressure, and pain, and this area of the brain also controls the ability to taste. So next time you snap a photo of your meal for Instagram or for your TikTok, make sure to tag your parietal lobe and give it a props. Like that, here you'll find the temporal lobe, the lateral fissure that separates over here. You will find the lateral cerebral fissure. So this lateral cerebral fissure, or simply the lateral fissure, separates the this temporal lobe from the frontal lobe, as it is situated posterior to the frontal lobe. The temporal lobe is controlled hub of a wide range of nervous system functions, including the interpretation and distribution of sensory information and cognitive process like the formation of memories and language recognition. The primary auditory cortex, that is located within this lobe and receives sensory information that is related to hearing. So details about this functional areas will cover in our upcoming videos. So right now just we will have a introductory part of this neuroanatomy of the cerebrum. The actual sensation of hearing and the process by which we interpret the auditory information, the directional source of a sound, what type of sound, etc., that is controlled by this temporal lobe. So recognition of language also takes place over here. The complex visual information such as your environments or images with many elements or a large variety of colors is processed here in this temporal lobe as well. This lobe is integral to process that require memory. The recalls of information assigned to specific objects or environments, general retention of knowledge during learning exercises, etc., that is actually processed over here. The information or the formation of long-term memory specifically is a key function of this temporal lobe. The hippocampus, that is the major structure that is also located in this temporal lobe or temporal region. The hippocampus is actually a Greek word coming from the hippo, horse, and the campus means monster. So it's a sea monster, horse sea monster, you can say, because of this structures resembles to a seahorse. That's why they given the funny name the hippocampus. The seahorse monster is also a part of the limbic system, that is a system primarily occupied with regulating emotions and is integral to memory and learning. Like that, here we'll find the occipital lobe also. So this occipital lobe is central to visual processing, that already we have discussed about this occipital lobe in our lecture series of your optic pathway. That interpretation of visual stimuli requires the ability to analyze information including the depth, distance, location, light, color, and identity of the object that being observed over here. So information obtained by visual stimuli is also directly linked with the memory. The involvement of the occipital lobe in the formation of memories is essential to recognition and memory recall. Here you can find the medial section of your cerebral hemisphere, where you will find somewhere you will find the amygdala. So this amygdala is another part of the cerebrum, that is functional component of the limbic system, that you can see here, the amygdala and the caudate nucleus. So this amygdala that is located in the temporal lobe and is involved in many autonomic nervous system functions, including the physiological response to fear, fight, flight response, and the secretions of hormones also. So this is one of the amygdala in each hemisphere will find. So the plural will be the amygdala. So this structure is particularly concerned with regulating the emotions of fear, anger, and pleasure. As you can see, the process and hormonal secretions that originate in the amygdala are all deeply reactive, and they are instinctual in nature. However, it is involved in more sophisticated functions as well. The amygdala is the structure that determines what memories are stored and where in the brain they are stored. So this process is thought to be influenced by what emotions were evoked during a particular event. A memory of your first meeting with your girlfriend will be stored somewhere completely different than the one where you were horrified at the Six Flags fright test. At least I hope so. So this amygdala is just right to that. Here you'll find the thalamus. So this thalamus, the gray matter, to be exact, located between the cerebral cortex and the midbrain, is more than just it looks like. Positioned under the cerebral cortex, the thalamus is involved in numerous sensory and motor functions, and also partially controls the circadian rhythm by signaling the brain to reduce certain physiological functions during the sleep. Like that, at this situation you will also find the basal nuclei. Earlier it was named as basal ganglia. So this basal ganglia is collective term that refers to a group of subcortical nuclei that are integral to motor control, learning, and executive functions and behavior, such as those regulated by the frontal lobe. The parts which collectively make up the basal ganglia are the putamen, that you will find over here, caudate nucleus, that you will find over here, and the globus pallidus, okay, the part of your lentiform nucleus, and the subthalamic nucleus, and the substantia nigra, that will find over the midbrain. So the caudate and the putamen together are referred to as the striatum. Despite everything that they are involved with, these structures are best known for their involvement in movement. Like that, here you'll find the olfactory bulb. The olfactory bulb is a structure that is located on the inferior portion of the cerebral hemisphere that you can observe over here. On the anterior portion of the brain that will find this olfactory bulb, and there is one per hemisphere, and they are attached to the cerebrum by an elongated structure known as the olfactory stalk or the olfactory peduncle. That already we have discussed about this olfactory pathway in our lecture series for the special sensory pathways that you can watch there. Uh, you may go to the playlist of the neuroanatomy. You will find all the videos over there, or you can press just this I button and you will find all these neuroanatomy videos that we have described earlier. So as the name suggests over here, the olfactory bulb is essential to the sense of smell and is partially involved in taste as well. And that already I have described how the taste and the smell they are correlated to each other. So here after this thing we can see the surfaces of the cerebrum. So a major factor in what makes humans so intelligent in the amount of surface area we have for the neurons. The more neurons a brain, a entire nervous system has, the more information that can be taken in, interpreted and retained like your memory card. The reason we have so much surface area is due to the folds or the bumps and grooves of the brain known as the gyri and the sulci. So gyri, that is the bumps over here, and the sulci, that is the groove over here. Imagine that you have a very large carpet, and on this carpet you place a coin every square inch. If you can fold this carpet enough, you can get it to be so compact that you can add more carpets with their coins and fit much more into the original space. So this is what the gyri and sulci accomplish, fitting as many neurons as possible within the space of human skull. In this way, intelligence is not a measure of the size of the brain but correlated to the ratio of surface area to volume. Intelligence is also considered to be correlated to the proportion of the body which the brain constitutes, but that is another story for another time. So the cerebellum is a massive portion of the brain and regulates countless processes that are essential to human survival and intelligence. As a part of the central nervous system, this structure is certainly one that we could not live without, and is a key part of the what keeps human at the top of the food chain. So come to the sulci and the gyri. So the cerebral cortex, the surface layer of the gray matter, is highly extensive in man. To accommodate it in the limited space available within the rigid cranial cavity, the surface of the cerebral hemisphere becomes folded, producing numerous convolutions separated by the fissures that you will find over here. These convolutions are and the fissures are termed as the gyri and sulci that already I have told you. So in human brain, the total surface area of the cerebral hemisphere is about 2000 centimeter long, but approximately two-thirds of this is hidden from the surface view within the walls of the sulci that you will find over here. So a brain with convoluted cerebral cortex is termed as the gyrencephalic, while one with smooth cortex is known as your lysencephalic. Lysos means the smooth. So from that you will find the lysencephalic. In general, men and other higher mammals have the gyrencephalic brain, while the reptiles, birds, and lower mammals have the lissencephalic brain. The sulci vary in depth from slight grooves to the deep fissures, and some of them are sufficiently deep to indent the wall of the lateral ventricle in the depth of the hemisphere. The gyri consist of a central core of white matter, nerve fibers running to and from the overlying cortex covered by a layer of gray matter that is known as your cerebral cortex. What is this cerebral cortex? The cerebral cortex is nothing but the collection of cell bodies over the surface of your nervous tissue. So if the cell bodies are covered here at the cerebral cortex, if it is present in the cerebellum, it is cerebellar cortex, nothing more than that. There is a great deal of individual variations in the details of the sulci and gyri. So we'll just see the main cerebral sulci and some gyri. So main cerebral sulci are fairly constant in position and shape and include the lateral, the central, the parieto-occipital sulci. So this lateral sulcus is the most conspicuous of all the cerebral sulci and has a stem and three rami. The posterior ramus, the anterior ascending ramus, the anterior horizontal ramus. So the stem of the sulcus begins as a deep cleft on the inferior surface of the cerebral hemisphere at the anterior perforated substance and extends laterally between the temporal pole and the posterior part of the orbital surface of the hemisphere. On reaching the superolateral surface, it divides into three rami. The anterior horizontal rami that you can observe here, and anterior ascending rami that you can observe over here, and the posterior rami or posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus. So the anterior horizontal ramus is about 2.5 cm long and passes forward into the inferior frontal gyrus. The anterior ascending ramus that we'll find over here that runs upward for about 2.5 cm in the same gyrus. The posterior ramus, the main part of the sulcus, is about 7.5 cm long and runs posteriorly and slightly upwards across the lateral surface and ends in the inferior parietal lobule by an upturned posterior end. The three rami of this lateral sulcus that diverge from each other at a point, this point is called as the Sylvian point. Then come to this central sulcus or the sulcus of Rolando. So the central sulcus begins by cutting the superomedial border that you can observe over here of the hemisphere about 1 cm behind the midpoint between the frontal and the occipital poles that runs sinuously downward and forward at an angle of 70° and ends just above the posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus, and its upper end usually extends into the medial surface that we cannot show here because we are seeing the superolateral surface. So the central sulcus forms the boundary between the motor area of the cerebral hemisphere in front and the sensory area behind. So you have to note here that it is the only sulcus of any length that indents the superomedial border of the hemisphere. And this sulcus serves as a key to localize the other sulci and gyri for the pathologist while performing an autopsy. Like that, here you will find the calcarine sulcus. So this calcarine sulcus is present on the medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere. It begins as a deep fissure a little below the posterior end of your corpus callosum that you can observe over here. This is your corpus callosum. So it just begins below to this corpus callosum is a deep fissure, okay, posterior end of the corpus callosum, and with a convexity it courses upward to the occipital pole and may extend slightly on the superolateral surface. Like that, you'll find the parieto-occipital sulcus that you can find over here. So this parieto-occipital sulcus is also present on the medial surface of the hemisphere, that it begins at the midpoint of this calcarine sulcus and courses upward and slightly backward, and it reaches at the superomedial border of the hemisphere about 5 cm in front of the occipital pole, and that may also extend slightly onto the superolateral surface. So, as I have already told you about the lobes of the cerebral hemisphere, so to discuss further about the sulci and gyri and other aspect of the cerebral hemisphere, the superolateral surface of the hemisphere is very much important, that you have to know that it is divided into 4 lobes as the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe and the temporal lobe. With the help of 3 main sulci is the central sulcus, lateral sulcus and the parieto-occipital sulcus. Two imaginary lines that we have to draw here. The first imaginary line is a vertical line joining the parieto-occipital sulcus to the pre-occipital notch that you will find over here, and the second line, that is a backward continuation that you can observe over here, is the dotted line, and that is backward continuation to the horizontal part of the posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus till it joins the first line. So the frontal lobe that lies anterior to the central sulcus and above the posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus. The parietal lobe that lies behind the central sulcus and in front of the upper part of the first imaginary line, and below it, it is bounded by the posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus and the second imaginary line, the horizontal line. The temporal lobe that lies below the posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus and the second imaginary line, and it is separated from the occipital lobe by the lower part of the first imaginary line. The occipital lobe that lies behind the vertical line joining the parieto-occipital sulcus and pre-occipital notch. Like that, you'll find the insula that you can see over here. So the insula that is actually submerged, or you can say the hidden portion of the cerebral cortex in the floor of the lateral sulcus. It has been submerged from the surface during the development of the brain due to the overgrowth of the surrounding cortical areas, and can be seen only when the leaves of the lateral sulcus are widely pulled apart and taken out. It is triangular in shape, as you can see over here in shape, and it is surrounded all around by the sulcus except the antero-inferiorly at its apex called the limen insulae that you can observe over here, which is continuation with the anterior perforated substance. So here you can see the insula, the you can say the island of Riehl that is exposed by removing the opercula. So the insula is also called as the central lobe in some books I have studied about this thing. So here the insula, it is divided into two regions, the anterior and the posterior, by a central sulcus, that is known as your sulcus centralis, that you can find over here. The anterior region present 3 or 4 short gyri that called as the gyri brevia, that you'll find over here, and the posterior region presents 1 to 2 long gyri that is known as your gyri longa. The insula, that is hidden from the surface view by the overgrown cortical area of the frontal, parietal and the temporal lobes, and these areas are termed the frontal, frontoparietal and temporal opericula. Opericulum means the lead. Okay, so opericula means the leads or the overgrowth of the frontal, frontoparietal and the temporal lobes that makes hidden to this central lobe, or you can say the insula. The superior surface of the temporal opericulum, that is presents anterior and posterior transverse temporal gyri. The middle cerebral artery and deep middle cerebral vein that lie on the surface of this insula. Sulci and gyri on the superolateral surface of the cerebral hemisphere, that is actually important for the exam point of view and for the study point of view. So here we have discussed more or less about the general structures and the little bit functions of the cerebral hemisphere. So on the next video we'll study detail about the internal structures of the cerebrum and how they are related to each other, and how the functions of this cerebral cortex is known as your conscious, the seat of consciousness, how it works and controls whole of your body, that we will study in our next video. So thanks for your patience and thanks for your watching this video. Please like, share and subscribe and press the bell icon to get the new updated videos. Thank you.